Hi, this is Jaya. In this video, we shall see the summary of The Rime of the Ancient Mariner by S.T. Coleridge. The Rime of the Ancient Mariner was published in 1798 and it was published in the first edition of Lyrical Ballads. And it is a poem that recounts the experience of a sailor who has returned from a long sea voyage. A mariner stops a man who is on his way to a wedding ceremony, and why he stops him is to share his story. The wedding guest is at first reluctant to listen as the ceremony is about to begin, but the mariner's glittering eye captivates him. The mariner's tale begins with his ship departing on its journey. Initially, the journey was showing good fortune, but the ship was driven south by a storm and eventually reached the icy waters of the Antarctic. An albatross appears and leads the ship out of the ice jam where it is stuck. But even as the albatross is fed and praised by the ship's crew, the mariner shoots the bird. The crew is angry with the mariner, believing the albatross brought the south wind that led them out of the Antarctic. However, the sailors change their minds when the weather becomes warmer and the mist disappears. They soon find that they made a grave mistake in supporting this crime, as it arouses the wrath of spirits who then pursue the ship from the land of mist and snow. The south wind that had initially blown them north now sends the ship into uncharted waters near the equator, where it is becalmed. The sailors change their mind again and blame the mariner for the torment of their thirst. In anger, the crew forces the mariner to wear the dead albatross about his neck, perhaps to illustrate the burden he must suffer for killing it, or perhaps as a sign of regret. After a weary time, the ship encounters the ghostly hulk. On board are Death, a skeleton, and the nightmare Life and Death, a deadly pale women, who are playing dice for the souls of the crew. With the roll of the dice, Death wins the lives of the crew members, and Life and Death the life of the mariner, a prize she considers more valuable. Her name is a clue to the mariner's fate. He will endure a fate worse than death as punishment for his killing of the albatross. One by one, all of the crew members die, but the mariner lives on, seeing for 7 days and nights the curse in the eyes of the crew's corpses, whose last expressions remain upon their faces. Eventually, this stage of the mariner's curse is lifted after he begins to appreciate the many sea creatures swimming in the water. He suddenly sees their true beauty and blesses them. As he manages to pray, the albatross falls from his neck and his guilt is partially expiated. It then starts to rain, and the bodies of the crew, possessed by good spirits, rise again and help steer the ship. In a trance, the mariner hears two spirits discussing his voyage and penance and learns that the ship is being powered supernaturally. Finally, the mariner wakes from his trance and comes in sight of his homeland, but is initially uncertain as to whether or not he is hallucinating. The rotten remains of the ship sink in a whirlpool, leaving only the mariner behind. A hermit on the mainland who has spotted the approaching ship comes to meet it in a boat, rowed by a pilot and his boy. When they pull the mariner from the water, they think he is dead, but when he opens his mouth, the pilot shrieks with fright. The hermit prays and the mariner picks up the oars to row. The pilot's boy laughs, thinking the mariner is the devil. Back on land, the mariner is compelled by a woeful agony to tell the hermit his story. As penance for shooting the albatross, the mariner, driven by the agony of his guilt, is now forced to wander the earth, telling his story over and over and teaching a lesson to those he meets. After finishing his story, the mariner leaves and the wedding guest returns home, waking the next morning a sadder and a wiser.